Hi, I'm Gary Prince, hugely successful businessman, television personality extraordinaire, and tireless charity worker. Many people know me for my generosity. Charity begins at home. My home. Others for me legendary physical fitness.
He's really let himself go, hasn't he?
Yes, he has, love.
And some for that certain je ne sais quoi. Hey, I'm as honest as the day is long. Whatever way you look at it, I'm a prince among men.
Life is never dull with Gary Prince around, and he's back, Tuesday, 8:30, BBC One.
Revelations of a family secret finally exposed. The Angels are working wonders again here on BBC One in half an hour. First, BBC One's going behind the headlines.
Hello, and welcome to Behind the News. Our usual opening slot is a review of the month's newspaper headlines, but the future format is going to be slightly different as a result of the news review programme which started yesterday. First, let's look at Northern Ireland and the troubles there. On Good Friday, all the political parties came together, although two parties, the UK Unionists and the DUP, led by Ian Paisley, rejected the agreement reached by the others. The agreement is complex and there's no overall winner. All the participants have had to compromise in the interests of the ultimate aim, which is peace. The main points of the agreement are: since Ireland is no longer united, the South give up their right to the North. The North will have its own Northern Ireland Assembly, where Sinn Féin will be represented and may hold high office. Although there are those who would like to see Ireland united, the North will remain part of the UK. There has long been trouble between Republican groups and the paramilitaries. There have been bombing campaigns and shootings. Supporters of these groups will be pleased to learn that those who have been imprisoned can expect to be released if they observe the ceasefire. On the 22nd, there will be a referendum in the North and the South. It's a start and an important one. We've asked some deaf people to come over to talk about it. 2 from Northern Ireland and 1 from the South. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
There have been troubles for so long, and now we see the start of peace. How has this finally come about?
I think the parties realised that they had been working on this for years and years without achieving anything. Eventually, they realised they had to change. And after a round of debating and meetings, they finally managed to come to an agreement.
Well, you see, before the agreement, the parties would get together, then they'd disagree, and then the talks would fall down. I think that it started to change when John Major became involved, when he tried to achieve peace. He got them back together to take those first few steps. Some agreements were reached and, well, they gradually began to work together, and a working relationship was established. And, well, all the acrimony of the past began to subside. And finally, agreement was reached, except for the 2 parties who rejected the accord, but it's a positive result, and now, after the agreement, the mood is very positive. We've all had enough of the violence of the past 30 years, so the time is right now for change, and we'll have to see what the aftermath will be.
Mo Mowlam has focused very strongly on the issue. She's not listened to all the bickering and infighting. She's been very clear that the ultimate aim is peace. She wanted to get an agreement without all the arguments getting in the way. An agreed deal on the table was all she wanted to see.
I know that there was some antagonism between Adams and Trimble during the talks, and that Paisley refused to attend the meetings So how can peace really finally have been achieved?
I think we have to learn to compromise. They all did everything. Alan's black and white, bad people. People never learning faults on both sides. But what is happening now, the David Trumbull and Jerry Adams, they're learning. They work together. It's the only way forward.
I'd like to ask you, do you think that people like Blair and Clinton were able to put pressure on these people?
Well, Clinton came over 2 years ago, and I think that quite a lot of people were inspired by that. He was the most powerful man in the world, and it gave the process a huge boost in momentum. But it quickly faded afterwards. And then Tony Blair became involved, and I think his willingness to participate restored some of the momentum. He got people going again, or at least tried. Clinton really just lent his support without actively being involved. It was very encouraging.
When Clinton first came, he offered a representative to chair the meetings. And secondly, Clinton had the ability to influence both the parties to start working together.
I think a lot of people in Northern Ireland did wonder why Clinton was getting involved, and some felt that he should keep out and this was an Irish issue. But I think it was good that he did give us George Mitchell, as it meant that we had someone impartial. I'm sure that people accepted him as a chair because he really was impartial, and he handled the talks very well. And what we've got a result is this. I think we should give it a chance.
I think that Tony Blair has been the catalyst of this. His personality, he is able to draw information from Sun, and also with David Trumbull, because Tony recognizes that both they love their country. David Trumbull wants with England, Tony wants the Republic for that, but both want the best for this country. I think that's what's happening now. The new spirit of working together, compromise, forgetting all the past. Not all we have a sign, it means revenge, but still there everywhere to get rid of that.
There's just one more question I'd like to put to you. We know that in Ireland, both north and south, there are Republican groups and terrorist groups that have been running campaigns of violence. Are these people just intent on violence, or do they really want peace?
I feel that the political leaders are now going out of touch with people. Before they all follow them like sheep, but now people are thinking for themselves, had enough. Another thing, most of the trouble is in working class areas, Catholics, Protestants, poor areas, fighting there, rich people, the thing. Political leaders love war, rich areas.
Can you tell me, what about family backgrounds? Do they have any influence?
I feel that the trouble in Northern Ireland is not really political or religious. I feel it's tribal. It means children grow up in different areas, influenced by their father, mothers, grandfathers, grow up hitting each other. Nothing to do with politics or religion. It's just can't explain tribal warfare.
I'd like to ask all of you, what are your hopes for the future? What would you like to see achieved?
I feel that many people thought never happened. 30 years, disappointed, depressed. But when together Good Friday, many people were jumping on the joy bit look forward to new start for Northern Ireland.
Well, thank you all for coming in.
Well, £123 off. Looks like quite a saving.
Yes, it looks like a bargain.
It's all because the British government have announced that one company will no longer have a monopoly on gas provision. And the same thing is going to be true of the electricity companies as well. So the market is going to then be opened up to competition in both gas and electricity provision. This means that the companies are competing with each other for your custom in order to make a good profit. So it's all about competition, really. That's why this is happening.
Yes, with all these gas companies, you won't have to buy your gas from British Gas. Supposing you live in London, you could sign up with Eastern Gas or even Scottish Gas. So there are all these offers around at the moment, like this one from British Gas of £123 off. Eastern Gas are offering £30 cash back if you also get your electricity from the same firm. It looks like a very good deal and seems really simple. You just arrange to pay monthly by direct debit. But not all the offers are very clear.
Yes, that's true. And if you already pay by direct debit, then you're not going to make much of a saving. But if you change to a new supplier and then you get both gas and electricity from them, like, for example, Eastern Gas, you might then qualify for a one-off payment. There's some really tough competition amongst them. Now, the gas companies are all on the bandwagon at the moment, but the electricity companies are saying that they're actually jumping the gun a bit, since, in fact, deregulation hasn't even come into force yet. So maybe what we should be doing is hold off for a little while until deregulation occurs, when there's going to be even more competition out there. But if we do, we'll lose the £30 cash back. So it's hard to know what to do, really. The thing is, when hearing people see these offers, all they have to do is ring up and find out all about it. But how are deaf people supposed to be able to do that?
I think the best advice is, if you're at home and somebody just turns up at your door, be very wary. It happened to someone at See Here, when a representative from one of the gas companies called around with a form. When he was asked what the form was all about, he said it was just a piece of market research. So our colleague filled it in, double-checked that he would still be with the same gas company. But when he pressed further, it turned out that he was actually signing up with a completely different firm. So that's why you need to be very careful and be particularly wary of anyone who turns up without a pre-arranged appointment. That's important to remember.
And now let's turn to Israel and the two main stories there. This week saw the 50-year celebrations of independence, whilst at the same time, sadly, taking a look back and remembering the many Jewish people who fell victim to the Holocaust during the Second World War. The British Prime Minister was recently in the Middle East trying to restore talks between the Arabs and the Israelis, in effect to give a boost to the peace process. Both sides have agreed to come to London for a meeting, but the Israeli Prime Minister has warned the rest of the world that achieving peace in the region is not going to be easy. It's a particularly poignant time because, while celebrating their independence, there are still underlying threats to peace in the country, and there are everyday instances of violence. The future for the Israelis, the Jews, and the Arabs is starting to look up. And here with me to discuss this issue is Eva Fielding Jackson.
Hello.
Am I right in thinking that you're actually going to Israel this week?
That's right, on Wednesday. I've just had an operation, so I'm going out there to recuperate. And it just happens to be at the same time as the Israeli celebration of independence. And on a personal level, it's also the anniversary of my mother's death, 9 years ago. So I'm looking forward to going on Wednesday.
Can I ask you to clarify something for me, Eva? There are Jewish people, there are Israeli people, and then there's a separate group called Zionists. Can you tell me what the differences are?
Well, first of all, a Jew is anyone who believes in the Jewish faith, like a Christian or a Muslim. It's the religion. A Christian could live anywhere, and that's the same for a Jew. An Israeli is someone who lives in Israel and has an Israeli passport, so they have been brought up or they live there, but they don't have to have been born there, but their identity is Israeli. A Zionist could be a Christian, but it means someone who believes in the state of Israel and that it belongs to the Jewish people. So back in the 19th century, there were a lot of Christians who were Zionists. It's a movement of people who believe in Zion, which goes back to the Bible. Zion is mentioned in the Bible 152 times, and it's just another word for Jerusalem. Zionism is a movement which believes in a Jewish land for Jewish people.
It seems that for quite a long time, I think it's well known that Jewish people have suffered problems in terms of conflicts with others outside of Israel, whereas now it's becoming an internal problem. It seems almost like a civil war. What's going on?
Well, the history of Jewish people has often involved war, going right back to the beginning of time, and we've often been blamed for this situation. And when the State of Israel was established 50 years ago, the very next day we're at war with 5 neighbouring countries, like Iraq and the others. So Israel was immediately defending itself against its neighbours. That has now settled down, and there's some hopeful talk of peace. Who know if it'll happen? But now within Israel there are divided views. There are some who believe we should keep the land. God gave it to us. It was promised in the Bible. It is the promised land, and it belongs to us. But there are other people who believe that land isn't important, peace is what's important, and that we should give it back and hope for peace. So it's an internal conflict. Remember when Rabin, the Prime Minister, was shot? He was actually shot by another Jew who was against giving the land back. Rabin wanted to give the land back, but the assassin didn't want to see Israel destroyed, so he shot him. So there's a slight sadness on the 50-year celebrations, and no one knows what the future holds.
Let me ask you, today there are already Jewish people living in Israel, living their everyday lives, and yet that conflicts with the Zionist philosophy. What do they feel about Zionists, and how do they reconcile what's happening?
Well, everyday life there just goes on. People get up in the morning, they go to work, they have families, people get married and have children. I don't think they stop to think. It's only when you watch television or read the newspapers it makes you stop and think, of course. And then there's another group of Jewish people who live in Israel who actually object to the idea of the land of the Jews because it wasn't given by the Messiah, and just deciding to take it isn't good enough. So there's another conflict. These people are actually on the side of the Arabs and are helping people like the PLO who believe that the concept of Israel is wrong. So it's all the relationships within the country that are becoming tense. Religious Jews who wear the yarmulke are at loggerheads with those who don't, so what we're really talking about here is a civil war. The situation is not just about Zionism. You have to look at Israel as a whole, and do we want peace? Zionists are concerned with the state of Israel, but in their everyday lives people don't concern themselves very much with that. Of course, what people do worry about every day is bombings. You have to be very careful because your life may be under threat at any time. So there's a continual risk.
I see that you've brought a flag with you. Can you tell us a bit about it?
It's beautiful, but it does have a meaning. The 2 lines on it remind us of the Jewish prayer shawl. The Star of David has been associated with Jewish people all through history, but the colours also have a meaning. You know that once a war is over, a white flag is flown symbolising peace. Yes, that's right, peace. And the blue represents the sky, where people look up to when they're hoping for something. So the meaning of the flag is that Jewish people are hoping for peace. That's what it means. I hope there will be peace.
Well, I hope you have a safe flight out there and that you enjoy the celebrations, and let's all hope for peace for the region.
Some of you may have seen the many reports in the news about health issues, and in particular the concern of the overuse of antibiotics, which are used to treat serious illnesses like TB, meningitis, malaria, and the hospital virus MRSA. These are starting to become more widespread because of the frequent use of antibiotics. Through overuse over the years, people are now finding that when they are ill, the drugs aren't working as they should because germs have become immune to them. As a result, doctors have been warned against overprescribing antibiotics, and people have been urged not to ask for them for minor ailments. The main worry is that there may not be any drugs able to cure these illnesses in the future. And it's not just us. Farming methods are also a matter for concern, where animals are injected with antibiotics to stimulate growth, to increase sales, and of course profits. What this means is when we eat the animals, the antibiotics are added to those already in our system, and we're not able to fight these illnesses. That's why the report wants to make people aware of this serious issue. It said that antibiotics shouldn't be taken as if they were sweets. I'm sure we'll come back to this issue.
And finally for this week, we're all going to be going back to the polls again. It's just a year since the general election where, as I'm sure you remember, Labour won a landslide victory. Now we're voting again, this time in local elections. Will the local elections be influenced by the result that we saw in the general election? Will people vote in the same way, or will they vote differently? With me today are David Buxton and Mark Nelson. Hello.
Hello.
I seem to remember, Mark, the last time you were on our programme was just before the general election, when you said you felt it was time for a change of government and you raised a lot of issues. Are you as enthusiastic about the local elections as you were then?
You're right, last year's general election was fascinating. There were all sorts of debates going on. But now with the local elections, yes, it's interesting, but it's not on the same scale as the general one. The local ones haven't been publicised very well. I haven't seen much about them. With the general election, you saw posters in windows saying vote Labour, vote Conservative. But this time there's been very, very little. It's just not as interesting.
Yes, it's true that it's not quite on the same scale, but are you still interested in the local elections, or are you not bothered? Are you actually going to vote?
Oh yeah, I'm going to vote, of course. I want to be involved, but I'm not as excited about it as last year. Local politics are about things like refuse collection. At the moment in my area, we have a bit of a problem with refuse collection, so I'd probably vote thinking about things like that. Those kinds of minor things, not major things. I won't worry about them, but I will vote for the ones I agree with.
Do you feel then that refuse collection is a major issue, or is it not really that important?
No, it's not important to me. I'm a student, and so that's not my major concern. But I think to other families it is. They need their rubbish collecting. In the area where I live, the council's got these new contractors. They wanted to privatise everything. They didn't want it to be a public-run service anymore. So that's what's happening with the rubbish collection in my area. But there should be more important issues discussed, like disabled people, deaf people. I'd like to see more happening in my area for deaf people who need support. There's very little. It's totally crap. It's not good at all. There should be a lot more support. And all they're talking about is rubbish collection.
Yes, I see what you mean. I think with local councils there are a lot of issues, hospitals, police, a number of things. David, do you agree with Mark's view? Do you think there's a big difference between local and general elections?
Well, I think that the points Mark has raised are important, but I'd like to make it clear councils provide services like education, social services, the environment, road repairs, lighting and so on, broad range of things. And I think it will be important for him to find out who's actually running his local council. Is it Labour? And is he happy with the services? Then get hold of the election leaflets, read through them, and if it's just talking about refuse collection, maybe they're trying to hide something. And then you have to decide how to vote. And it really depends on which area you live in. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, I think with the general election, each party had its own manifesto and they were all clearly different, which was good. But looking at the local election literature, there seems to be a lot of overlap between the parties, and the policies aren't as clearly defined as they were in the general election. And sometimes one party's policies seem different on a local level to how they are on a national level. Surely this is stupid. I mean, let me give you an example. There's one party who said that the general election, that they supported state schools and they didn't want a grammar school system, that they felt it wasn't fair and they wanted equal education for all. But now in the local election literature, they're supporting grammar schools, saying they want parental choice. This is different from the national party policy. Why? It's stupid. It should be the same.
Well, I think it really depends. I mean, supporting grammar schools is a Conservative policy. But if it's a Labour council, what they're interested in is something that maybe people have to challenge. The local party is trying to remain in control of the council. That's their main problem. They want to stay in power, so what they're trying to do is please all the voters locally, and that creates a bit of a problem. Lots of parties locally are at odds with the party nationally.
So that's the local elections which are going to be coming up soon. But also in London, there's the London-only election where people are going to be voting on whether or not to appoint a mayor. This is a new idea, so what's going on, David?
Well, a mayor of London is really a Labour initiative, and the election concerning a mayor means giving people the choice of saying yes or no in a referendum on May the 7th. So my party's view is that we are opposed to the idea of a directly elected mayor because he will have total control, like a president in the United States, whereas our party believes in something more like a prime ministerial system, with an assembly who would then elect the mayor. Well, that's why we're opposed to the idea of a directly elected mayor, because of the amount of power, and then the assembly just becomes a talking shop with no power. And I think that's a worry in London. We don't want a mayor making decisions and moving ahead with them. We don't want that. What we want is an assembly with power, so we're urging London to think again. And after, if there is a yes vote, we'll carry on our campaign to make sure that the assembly does have power to serve the people.
Can I ask you to give us an example of one of the dangers of having what you see as a presidential type system where one person has all the power? What are the dangers? You've said you'd rather have an assembly where things can be discussed. Why?
Because otherwise, why have an assembly? What's its purpose? That's the question we want to see discussed. If you look at the American presidential system, you still have the Senate, and those representatives do have power. The president, if he has a budget proposal, it goes to the Senate, and they can raise issues with it. But at the end of the day, the president can overrule and implement it. So we want an assembly with some real power, not just a talking shop. That's a danger. While they're all talking, someone else is making all the decisions. That will be detrimental for London, and we don't want that.
Yeah, but it won't be a talking shop. The assembly will be there to support that individual as the mayor. I think it's better that one person has the authority to make the decisions. London life moves fast and decisions have to be reached quickly. If the assembly has the power and spends time debating these issues, surely that's a waste of time. It's better if one person has the authority to make quick decisions.
Well, it's going to be up to the people of London to decide whether they're for or against. Thank you both for your contributions. You've really clarified the local issue for us.
Well, we have to stop you there. Once again, it's politics influencing our everyday lives. We'll see you again next month. Bye-bye.
Bye.